You know, it's really strange that I just figured out the dollar is a symbol of your slavery. Is a symbol of our slavery. Um, we're not going to school if we're already done school and everything. We're going out to work. We're going out to work to get the almighty dollar. Most of us basically have the same amount of money coming in each year: $60,000, $50,000, $70,000, whatever you might have as a single person living and working. If you're in a family unit, you're making $120,000, whatever it may be, to feed yourself, to clothe yourself, to get expensive items that might make you happy. Um, and realize that we only work about 5 days a week. 5 days a week. 5 days a week you go to work in a job that you may or may not like. 8 hours. 8 hours per day. You come home, you're tired, you just want to sit down in front of the television, enjoy yourself until the next day of work. Then, of course, you got Saturday and Sunday, and that's your free time. But Sunday, well, Monday's coming right around the corner. You remember that when you were in school. Sunday was the worst weekend day. Really, what you have is Saturday and a little bit of Friday. You can stay up late if you can, if you're able to keep your brain working after you have worked an entire week. Now, of course, most of us have to do this. We have to do this. Otherwise, we're sitting at home and collecting a paycheck through welfare, which is not really the greatest thing to do. Seeing as though it's kind of good to keep your mind occupied doing something besides sitting at home all day and watching YouTube videos or whatever you may be doing. Your brain is like a piece of gum. It needs to be chewed in order to actually fucking do something for you. It needs to actually work on something. It needs to actually choose something. But 8 hours a day, 5 days a week is repetitive and boring, and you're getting a certain amount of money, and you're making the same amount of money mostly every year, but you're making less at the same time. What do I mean by that? Well, prices are going up every single year by at least 3%, because the old American dollar has to be printed off every single year, a certain amount, in order to meet up with an inflationary rate of 3%, which means your dollar is now worth 3% less than it was before, if you're lucky, if they don't do another QE. And if they do another QE, then your dollar is even worth less, and you can buy less. And of course, you have the politicians saying, we're going to make things better by making your employer pay you more if you're working a minimum wage job. People fall for it. People fall for the idea that making it so that the dollar is, that you have to get paid more, that obviously it will fix this problem of inflation. When really in reality, the economic reality of the situation is that dollar is being decreased in value once the minimum wage goes up, because businesses can make more money, and they have to make more money because they raise the minimum wage, which means they're going to have to lay off some employers, and they're going to have to increase their prices in order to meet up with demand. The dollar is literally a symbol of your slavery. And yet it's the only thing that you can do a transaction. In a real free society, wouldn't it be a lot easier to have more than one symbol of currency to exchange, to do a voluntary exchange? Sure, of course we have bartering and everything else like that. We could possibly do that in a free society. I'm not sure if there's any laws against it, but it doesn't seem like anyone really has the time to figure out which particular item that somebody else will take for another particular item, which is part of the reason why we don't do bartering. But one thing you could do is come up with another currency. One that might not be as easily replicated as the United States dollar. Of course, it's against the law to do that sort of thing. Why is it against the law? It doesn't necessarily actually hurt anyone. Actually, if you think about it, it would help more people if there was more than one currency going around. Because let's say $60,000 is not enough to buy food, groceries, things you need. But fuck it, you can't have a transaction between one person and another person, one person and a company, with some other alternative form of currency, because the big man on top doesn't want you to do that. I say fuck the law. You're not fucking doing anything by having a voluntary transaction with your neighbor, with your friend, with family, with somebody that owns a company. It shouldn't be illegal. What you do with your own transactions, what you do with your own voluntary interactions, what you do with your own life in general should be up to you, as long as if it's not hurting anyone. Yet, most of those things are illegal. This is what they do. This is what the top does to get us into a method of thinking that the only way to change things is by relying upon them. When really, reality is, if we didn't obey those laws, and if we didn't, as police officers, as law enforcement agencies, enforce those laws that didn't fucking hurt anyone, then we wouldn't be slaves. That's it. You shouldn't have to rely upon an external entity to tell you what is right and what is wrong. You have your own intuition and you have your own sense of what is moral and what is not. Some of them might be something that you prefer, not to do marijuana, not to do drugs. That is completely up to you. That should be your prerogative to figure out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. If you don't want to do drugs, then you shouldn't have to do drugs. If you do want to do drugs, you should be able to. But the law says you can't. But the law says you can't do drugs. The law in the 1900s said you couldn't have alcohol. Now the law has changed. Why has the law changed? Because it didn't work. Just like the drug works. Not fucking working, yet we perpetuate it. We need to understand that the law has no bearing on what actually is right and what actually is wrong. You have a sense of right and wrong. You don't want to do drugs. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. It's your prerogative. You take it into your own personal life. But we have no right on insisting that the government enforces our own sense of morality, our own sense of how we want to live our own lives upon everyone else. The only real law that is universal is the non-aggression principle, is the fact that you are not allowed to kill someone. You are not allowed to rape someone. You are not allowed to murder someone. You are not allowed to force someone to do something that they don't want to do. You are not allowed to commit theft or robbery or anything else like that. Anything that involves you inflicting your own personal once upon somebody else while creating a win-lose scenario. Win for you and lose for them. Lose for your neighbor, lose for your friend or your family member or your stranger or whatever it may be. Those things are the only things that one could say is against the law. Otherwise, law shouldn't exist. It should not exist. You own yourself. You should be able to do whatever the fuck you want to do as a human being and not have to rely upon the fuckers on top that say you're not allowed to do what you want to do in your own life that is not hurting somebody else. This has been Lapse of Apathy, injecting truth right directly into your eyeballs, just like the heroin, right directly to my eyeballs. I'm just kidding. I don't do that shit. You own yourself, and I own myself. Nobody can take that away from you. Peace.